One of my least favorite conditions in an agreement of purchase and sale is a sale of property condition. They carry more risk and they give you less control than most people realize. Now, I've dealt with these conditions on both sides of the deal, back when I was a realtor, and now I deal with them as a lawyer. And I've seen the fallout when they're drafted poorly. So if you're a homeowner thinking about selling or a realtor looking to improve your drafting skills, I'm going to break down the real risks of these conditions and give you 3 tips to protect yourself before you sign. My name is Zachary Soccio-Marandola. I'm a real estate lawyer here in Toronto, and I help people like you close real estate deals every single day. Now, if you enjoy this type of content, make sure you subscribe and join our community. And if you have a closing coming up, we've built the most transparent legal fee calculator online. It gives you a full breakdown, even calculates land transfer tax and title insurance. That's linked down below in the description. Okay, what is a sale of property condition? Now, before talking about the risks, it helps to understand what the condition actually means. Now, a sale of property condition means the buyer is only required to complete the purchase if they're able to sell their current home first. Now, the condition itself will include a deadline. The buyer must sell their home by that date, and if they do, the deal continues forward. Now, if they don't sell their home by that deadline, the buyer can cancel the agreement and get their deposit back. Hence the condition. So as a seller, you're agreeing to take your home off the market, or at least significantly reduce its exposure, while you wait on the outcome of a completely separate transaction that you have no involvement in. Now let me walk you through why these conditions are so risky for sellers. The first risk is obvious, but important. You're giving up control of your timeline. Your closing, your plans, your next move, all of it depends entirely on someone else's ability to sell their home. You're not just waiting on your buyer, you're waiting on your buyer's buyer, and you have zero control over any of it. The second risk is the one that most people miss. The standard ORIA clause for the sale of property condition is really vague. This is it here. It says that the offer is conditional on the sale of the buyer's property. That's it. There's nothing in that standard clause that requires the buyer to actually list their property. There's nothing that says they have to list it at a reasonable price. When I was a young realtor, I had a client accept one of these conditions with a 1-month conditional period. These buyers didn't even get their own property listed on the MLS until 5 days before the condition was due to expire. So for almost the entire conditional period, my client's home was sitting there, effectively off the market, and the buyers hadn't even started trying to sell. Just last year, I was called in to advise on a scenario where the seller accepted a sale of property condition and later realized that the buyer's property was severely overpriced. The condition was never going to be fulfilled. They were tied up for weeks waiting on a sale that was never going to happen. The third risk is the market cost. While you're waiting, your property usually shows as conditionally sold on the MLS. Some buyers see that and move on. In some searches, it may not even show up at all. Then, if the condition falls through 3 or 4 weeks later, you're putting the property back on the market, and buyers see that. Someone agreed to buy it and then walked away. And now most don't stop to find out why. They just assume something's wrong. Now, the listing feels stale, buyers get skeptical, and you're back on the market in a worse position you were than when you started. Now, I'm not saying you should never accept a sale of property condition. Sometimes it's the best offer on the table and it makes sense for your situation. But if you're going to accept one, here are 3 things you can do to make the situation significantly better. Number 1, do your due diligence on the buyer's property. Before you even think about accepting a sale of property condition, you need to do some homework. Is the buyer's property already listed? Is it priced in line with the market? Are they offering cooperating brokerage commission in line with other properties in the area? These are 3 things that will tell you whether this condition has a real chance of being fulfilled. If the property isn't listed, that's a problem. If it's overpriced, you're waiting on a sale that may never happen. And if they're not offering a competitive commission, whether we like it or not, the chances of them selling goes down significantly. Now, if any of those boxes aren't checked, you have 2 options. You can push back on the condition entirely, or you can add obligations directly into the clause to fix it. You can require the buyer to list their property by a specific date. You can set a maximum listing price. You can require a cooperating brokerage commission that's in line with the market. If the buyer fails to meet any of these requirements, the seller can have their own option to terminate. Essentially, you're building accountability and giving yourself an exit if the buyer isn't holding up their end of the deal. So number 2 is the escape clause. This is the most important tool you have as a seller when accepting a sale of property condition. An escape clause allows you to keep marketing the property during the conditional period. You can still do showings, you can still receive offers. Here's how it works. If another offer comes in that you're willing to accept, you give notice to the original buyer. That buyer then has a set amount of time, usually 24 to 72 hours, to decide what they want to do. And they have 2 options. They can waive their sale of property condition and move forward with the purchase, or they can walk away from the deal. If they can't waive the condition, the agreement becomes null and void, their deposit is returned, and you're free to proceed with the new offer. Without an escape clause, you're essentially locked in. You can't move forward with another buyer while you wait for the first buyer to sell their home. That's why in practice, this clause should be a non-negotiable. If you're accepting a sale of property condition, make sure this is in there. Number 3, the release condition. Now, the escape clause allows for the exit, but the release condition is what protects the second deal. The second offer needs to include a condition that says the purchase is conditional on the seller being released from the first agreement of purchase and sale. Now, in legal terms, this is called a true condition precedent. Neither party can waive it. The release actually has to happen for the deal to proceed. So here's how these two clauses work together. The escape clause lets you force the first buyer to make a decision, and then the release clause protects the second deal by making sure it only proceeds if the first one is terminated. That way the seller isn't on the hook for two different buyers. One triggers the process, the other protects the backup deal. Sale of property conditions are more common in slower markets like today, and sometimes accepting one is the right move. But you need to go in with your eyes open. Do your due diligence and add listing obligations for real accountability. Include an escape clause, so you're never locked in without options, and understand how the release clause works so the transition to a backup deal is clean. If you do those three things, you're in a much stronger position than most sellers who accept these conditions. If you're enjoying these behind the scenes real estate law videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I post a new video every week. And if you're a realtor, I also send a weekly update about different legal situations that come up in our closings. That's our realtor newsletter, and you can subscribe to it with the link down in the description. Thanks for watching.